Very, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to especially welcome you to this very special occasion. My name is Oke Bakasi, and I feel highly honored to be your host for tonight. Just a few months ago, we were all wondering, are we ever going to get together in flesh like this? Exchange handshake, pleasantries. But today we thank God is a reality that once more these social animals called humans can get together the way they used to. 2020 came as a surprise. The prophets could not predict, scientists did not warn us enough, and COVID crept up on us like a thief in the night and changed our way of life. Things started happening across the globe. World leaders were confused. People went into some sort of panic. And the general information became lockdown, lockdown, lockdown. Here in Nigeria, we were equally confused. But you know here we do copy and paste. So when they say lockdown abroad, here in Nigeria, they will say lockdown. Once they say Nigeria, they say work from home. But Nigerians became confused and said, if we work from home, how are we going to feed our families? 80% of our means of livelihood depends on us going out. In the whole confusion, weird stuff started happening. Never in our lives did we imagine that a security man will be checking the temperature of a doctor in front of a bank. That was how weird society became. But good things also came out of COVID. For the first time in the history of mankind, Christians, Muslims, pagans, those who did not believe in anything at all, came together and agreed for the first time that alcohol was useful, even if it's for washing of hands, aka sanitizer. So even Al-Haji that never touched alcohol had small in his pocket for sanitization. That was how strange the world became. But we all survived it. And we all here this evening, ladies and gentlemen, we deserve a round of applause because we are all survivors. Please, wherever you are, put your hands together for yourselves. We made it. We made it. And here we are gathered again for another great occasion. To set the tone for this evening, permit me to invite to the microphone a man who you all know. He needs no introduction. A man who, in fact, his academic record is as stellar as his business experience. First class honors, BSc Civil Engineering from the great University of Ife, Masters from the great Oxford University, man who has straddled all financial institutions that you know around the world, and who has distinguished himself. Ladies and gentlemen, you already know who I'm talking about. Please, a big round of applause for Mr. Ike Chioke to set the tone for the night. Please, a big round of applause. Big round of applause as he steps forward this evening to set the tone for what great event. And I will still be on standby here serving you. Thank you very much. Can we once more, please, a round of applause? Looking up, as you're welcome. This mic is all yours. If you still want mine, you're free to have it.
Investment banking franchise being set up, and there was suddenly a whole slew of transactions to do, capital raising, mergers, and so Afrinvest Nigeria became the face of the transaction for sectrust in Nigeria. And we did quite a number of deals. Some you know, like the merger of Standard Trust Bank with UBA. We organized that transaction. It was the very first deal. Alhaji Mohammed Hayatuddin is here. We are privileged to have organized sectrust. And that's what happened. Sectrust then acquired the remainder of the shares in Afrinvest Nigeria, and then changed its name to Afrinvest West Africa. So that company That went from a single sector to 2 companies because Afrinvest then Nigeria became what is now a broker-dealer, Afrinvest Securities Limited. And we have there's securities, asset management, trustees, capital, our Asian house, Andromeda, our fintech business, consulting, our research has morphed into a consultancy, and more to come. So that shows some progress. So today we are not only just celebrating our 27th anniversary, we are also acknowledging all these events that happened to us, given how challenging the Nigerian environment is. To have survived these many years is a show of some. We call today Sparkle because we started a project called Project Sparkle early in the year. And that's a very interesting project. I will reserve the opportunity for one of my colleagues to explain to you the meaning behind Sparkle later on during this program. But when we're thinking of a name for this event, given that we are celebrating our 27th anniversary, we are launching our 2022 banking sector report. Today's report will be the 17th report we've written on the Nigerian banking sector. And just a bit of background, that report always captures the picture of what is going on in the Nigerian economy and paints a sort of gives a direction of what we could see in the next 1 year. And then last but not the least, we are unveiling our new digital platform, which is designed to springboard Afrinvest into becoming perhaps Nigeria's first digital investment bank. And that is why we're all here. And so we decided that the name Sparkle would be an appropriate way to show you how Afrinvest is sparkling. So once again, I want to welcome you all, and I sit down, relax, and enjoy. Thank you.
Sit down, relax, and enjoy, he said. Okay. Have a for today's event. It's only befitting that I invite the chairman of this group to also give us a welcome address. And after that, the business of the day. So ladies and gentlemen, please, with a round of applause and a warm welcome, please let's invite another very distinguished and the chairman of this applause for Mr. Donald Lawson. Please, a big engineer, please, my mic must be working at all times. Thank you. Nice Rivers outfits, are you welcome.
Hello. Okay. Thank you. Excellencies, members of the Board of Directors, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is with great delight that I welcome you to the Afrinvest Sparkle event, which encompasses the launch of the 17th edition of the Afrinvest Nigeria Banking Sector Report, the introduction of our new leadership, and the celebration of our 27th anniversary. Today's event is significant as it represents 27 years of innovation, simplifying investments, and creating wealth. Without gainsaying, the group has consistently positioned itself as a market leader, providing diverse financial and investment solutions to its teeming customers across different market segments. In nearly 3 years of advancing capital market development through expertise in investment banking and asset management, investment research, and securities trading services, we have built a reputation of stability, innovation, and thought leadership, servicing the needs of various corporate and government organizations. Our journey has not always been easy, but the grit, dedication of our excellent management and professional team over the years has resulted in the resilience the franchise has become closely associated with. Today, as we launch our annual Afrinvest Banking Sector Report, our flagship report, our aim is to offer a deep dive analysis of the Nigerian banking industry, including the local and global factors shaping the sector. Through our BSR report, we intend to unravel important issues, highlight risks and opportunities, and recommend the best course of action to policymakers and other stakeholders based on data-driven analysis. In the 2022 BSR report, we provided context to the post-lockdown performance of the sector and spotlighted the imprint that the pandemic and the global monetary policy actions could leave on banking operations going forward. In times like these, it is easy to default to despair. We, however, believe that these challenges, like the upcoming elections, should usher Nigeria into a new era as we rise to the challenge of making the necessary reforms and adjustments that will enhance productivity, resilience, and growth. As part of the launch, we shall deliberate on the changes that we hope will propel Nigeria and the banking sector forward. Together with experts across sectors of the economy, we would dimension critical issues and offer insights on new ways to solve legacy problems. Like all things good, the process of change might be disruptive. Therefore, we believe that it is imperative to brace the impacts and position ahead of these changes. This is why at Afrinvest, we believe that navigating uncharted territories is best accomplished through innovation and nimbleness, and this has led us to embark on the digitalization of our service offerings by creating a digital financial ecosystem. This digital financial ecosystem is offered on a world-class technology platform, our Optimus, which integrates all elements of the Afrinvest franchise service offerings across its different regulated entities into a single customer interface. The board, management, and staff are enthusiastic about the new business expansion initiatives as Afrinvest positions for the decades ahead as it transitions from a leading investment banking holding company into what will be known as Africa's preferred digital investment bank. I look forward to a fruitful engagement today. I am confident that our deliberations would inspire policymakers in the right direction and help the nation realize the fullness of its potential. I once again thank everyone for coming and wish you a wonderful experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Simple, straightforward, but punchy. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, anybody who knows me well knows that I've been a major player in Nollywood, and the video business is my business. As a young kid growing up, I was, like every other kid, fascinated by television and the powers that it had. You know, I grew up at a time when it was one television set per square kilometer, and you go to your neighbor's house, beg to watch through their window. I also remember then that a certain old woman came to Lagos to visit her daughter who just put to bed. You know what Igbo people will call a mugo. And Mama had never seen a TV set before. So on arrival to Lagos, the daughter ushered her to the guest room, made her comfortable. While she went to freshen up, turned on the TV set in Mama's room and went to prepare lunch for Mama. Well, as we receive some dignitaries, in the course of this program, I will do some recognition but we just wanted to keep this thing rolling. Anyway, back to the story. They made her comfortable. The daughter went to set lunch. Mama went to shower. They turned on the TV set. 1 hour later, nobody saw Mama. The daughter went back to the room. Behold, Mama was done having her shower, still clutching her towel to her chest. And the daughter was like, Mama, I will set lunch for you since now. Come out and eat. He said, my pikin, if I don't come out, I they wait make this man wait there here, come out, I might change clothes. You know, that was the kind of effect that television set had on Mama way back then. But Nigeria has gone through a lot. We've changed. Science, technology, too many things have happened. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like for us to put our attention on this wonderful screen. For now, it says Sparkle, but in a few minutes, you will see something that we all need you to see before I invite the next speaker on the stage. Please pay attention to any screen next to you for this video.
Banking industry. Through economic growth and recessions, through market expansions and contractions, through industry consolidation and technological change, through evolving regulations and political change, has been there. Sifting through complex data to extract actionable insights for informed decision-making. It started with our 2006 report, which chronicled the consolidation of the Nigerian banking sector that ended in 2005. Since then, we've consistently published the Nigerian banking sector report every year without fail. In 2009, we brought you the Sanusi tsunami. 2014, we brought you navigating growth in a challenging environment. 2017, on the back of bouncing back from the recession of 2016, we brought you Nigeria Reopens for Business. In 2020, in the middle of the unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic, we brought you the insecurity challenges of poverty. Today, we are launching our 17th edition of the Nigerian Banking Sector Report. The report is coming in the context of deteriorating fundamentals for the global economy. Meanwhile, the Nigerian economy, although recovering from the pandemic, is going through an oil boom without any oil revenues. What will be the theme of the 2022 report? Watch this space.
All right, it says watch this space. It was the former First Lady of the United States, Eleanor Roosevelt, who said, and I quote, "A woman is like a tea bag. You can never tell how strong until you immerse in hot water." Nigerian women are indeed very powerful. Whenever we have challenged them, they've risen to the occasion. Ladies and gentlemen, our keynote speaker this evening is the founder and CEO of the Chair Center Group, a diversified group covering manufacturing, retail, banking, security systems. She's an African entrepreneur. She serves as a chairperson, board member of several corporate and non-profit groups. Recently, she was appointed to the Binance Global Advisory Board. In addition, she's a member of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group and served on the Pioneer Board of the Nigerian Sovereign Wealth Fund. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a woman who occupies so many portfolios, 4 honorary degrees. And one thing she has in common with our group CEO is that they both went to the Great Ife. Ladies and gentlemen, if those hands are free, please please, a resounding round of applause as I invite our keynote speaker, Mrs. Ibuku Awoshika. Please keep clapping until she gets here. Did I add that she was the first female chairperson of the First Bank of Nigeria Limited? Madam, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Big thank you to the Afrinvest team from Godwin Obaseki, His Excellency, who is not here, all the way to my friend IK, His Excellency, the Governor of Edo State, Governor Godwin Obaseki, and I were classmates from the Chief Executive Program at Lagos Business School. In fact, till he went to be governor, I was class president and he was our class secretary. And a very diligent, committed member. So between him and IK, I had no other choice but to say yes to be here this evening. And I'm sorry, I didn't get the dinner brief. You know, I was in between planes and just thought I was coming to a business session until I got here and thought, okay, sparkle and banking sector report. So I thought, okay, we'll do this the best we can. So I'm dressed in my own dinner, imagine it, just imagine my dark flowing gown. And I'm as elegant as you want for the dinner. Anyway, let's go to the serious business of the banking sector report. First, I'd like to congratulate Afrinvest for diligence and consistency. In Nigeria, many people don't stay the long haul. They don't do it long enough. They're not deliberate, they're not consistent, and they cannot be trusted to continue to do the right thing. I can say that if you've read the reports over time, and even more importantly, if you read the report for this year, you have to give Afrinvest the kudos for being honest. That's what I said to Biodun when I said the one thing I can say to you is that you guys were not afraid to be honest in making the assessment that you did. But because you've set up for a dinner and for fun, I'm not going to, damage our appetite in any way. What I will do is I will encourage everyone to take the time to read the report, to get the details. This executive summary alone is about 28 pages. So that gives you an idea of the in-depth details that are in the report. But what it does is it helps you to see it in the context of the global view. You can see the whole world and the trend and the challenges of the now. From country to country, you get a sense of what is going on in the global economy. And then you bring it home to Nigeria, and you look at our own peculiar issues and the peculiarities that challenge us. But the theme for the report this year is bracing for impact. And that's really where I want to anchor my very short speech, is that in reality, whatever the fundamentals are, and the truth and the details of the challenges that we face, the challenges based on policies, or failure of policy, or ineffective execution of policies, or the challenges that have resulted from some of the actions we've taken over time. Some are cumulative, some are medium term, and some are things we've carried over for a while. The reality is, when we look at the factors at play, we can only go back and tell ourselves, as hopeful as we are, as we look forward to a new election, it always represents an opportunity for change. But you only get the opportunity for that change if the citizenry itself is responsible enough to take the opportunity of the change to effect real change that can impact what we want for the country. Now, there are three key things as I see it, in terms of everything that needs to be done in order to reset the challenges that have been identified in the report and the opportunities that it presents in the future. One, we need courageous leadership. For us as a country, that will require a miracle in some sense. It will require the citizenry in itself being committed to the truthfulness of pursuing the process of having the right kind of leadership that we have. But even when I say that, as I'm saying that to you, I can already answer back myself and say, but we are tied to the process that the political parties operate and the format in which the candidates that we even have to vote for are produced. And therefore, whatever candidates appear from that process, those are the only options that the process permits and allows us to choose. So in this case right now, we have a scenario, and we're going to have to ask ourselves that, do we have a process within the next political cycle to actually have courageous leadership? Why is that important for us? If you go through the report and you see some of the key problems that are weighing us down as a nation, the reasons that make nonsense of the brilliance and the opportunities that Nigerians create, the challenges that undermines the ability of Nigerians to deliver exceptionally within our own shores, but do exceptionally well everywhere else in the world, we would realize that we have a systemic issue that we must have the courage to change. And until we do that, we will probably always be bedeviled with the issue of having a process that delivers to us the right options for us to choose the kind of leadership that we need for the change that is required. You need a leadership that has enough empathy for the citizens of the nation, that has a heart and the commitment, the diligence and the dedication to make hard calls. Leadership isn't about convenient decisions. It's not about convenient calls. It's not about what makes you popular. It's about what needs to be done, because sometimes even when the followership cannot see the long-term impact of what needs to be done, you must have the courage to do what is right in the interest of the nation and have the audacity to stand and fight for what you know will serve the interest of the people, even sometimes when they themselves do not know. That kind of leadership we need in order to be able to deal with a number of the issues that have been raised in the report. That's when I said we need a miracle. Maybe then you can begin to understand what I mean, because the parameters and the system in itself creates a limitation in terms of our ability to do that. 2, we need to find how to kill Mr. Corruption. Now, the question is how? Because at this point, it's a national problem. It is not just a government problem, it is a national problem. Because the government isn't sitting at every level of our lifestyle. It's not sitting at every level of the life that we live. It's not sitting at every point in the value chain of our country. We have managed to pass it down as a culture from level to level, from one age group to another. And therefore, we're destroying creativity, destroying entrepreneurship, we're destroying the opportunity for people to give their best and create the best value for our country, because the enabling environment is systemically destroyed by our corruption. Corruption is too expensive, and it costs us every day. It costs us on the roads when you see cars crash, or you drive on a Lagos-Ibadan road or any other road in Nigeria for hours on end, wasting economic hours that you should be using to produce constructively. It costs us when people die in hospitals where they do not need to, in a matter where we have already in our budget provided for those things that should make that place work, but it doesn't work, and therefore we lose the lives of our people. It costs us when our 69% population of young people under 45, which every country will die for, because it means that we have a highly productive, energetic population that can think, that can imagine, that can create, that can innovate, but we have managed to create a system that locks them down and makes it impossible for them to maximize their ability within the four shores of our nation. But we set them free to fly like birds to every other nation, to be an asset and a gift to those nations to build those nations. Look, personally, I don't care about Japa. I really don't mind that Nigerians want to go everywhere in the world, because we're enough to go anywhere in the world, create value, take value, and bring the value back. So I don't have a problem with that. If you ask the central bank to give you the correct report, they would tell you that even when we're selling oil well, repatriated funds by Nigerians in diaspora literally matches oil revenue. So we can export human capital. We have a lot of brilliant Nigerian minds, but we must be strategic and deliberate about it and maximize our human capital for the benefit of our country. They are exportable products, so I don't have a problem with that. But right now, people aren't going because of a strategic move. They're going because of lack of everything that they aspire for. And therefore, we're making people lose the dreams and the ability to innovate and to create the next generation of businesses that will help to build the economy of this country, and the next generation of manpower that will help the countries that already exist to survive. Every right-thinking company right now, in every board where I sit, you're seeing human capital reports. I chair REMCOs in some places, and then you're seeing number of levers, and you check where they're going, who is going, and you're trying so hard to find replacement, which means for a while, for the next few years, every company will underperform because they do not have the right human resource to drive the business. Everybody is retraining and rebuilding. We can do that. We can move. We can even decide every year we want to export 1 million people every year. We will do it successfully and we'll make a lot of money for our country. But we're not, this is not a strategic move for us. We have not deliberately decided that we want to export people. We have not built a plan and a system around it. We're driving our best minds out because they have lost hope. Now, as a Christian, the Bible says to me that I can hope against hope. That's what drives my faith, makes me go to bed when it's dark, knowing that there would be light in the morning when I wake up. But when the people have no hope, it's worse than shooting them, because really, they might as well be dead in many ways. And when we look at all of the issues, we realize that if we do not have courageous leadership, and if we do not find a way to kill corruption before it kills us, and number 3 for me, if we do not find a way to inspire our people to have a committed citizenry, such that we ourselves are gatekeepers at every door where we sit, such that we ourselves are gatekeepers at every door that we pass through, such that we ourselves become accountable and committed to doing the right thing at every place and demanding it of others, such that we ourselves become committed to speaking up for what is right and not what is convenient or profitable for us personally, we will find that some of the challenges, as highlighted in the 2022 report, becomes debt traps that, even though we have the ability to build a bridge over them and not fall into them, it becomes difficult to imagine how, because there isn't a roadmap that makes it easy for us. Now, I'm an eternal optimist. That's what my husband says. I can never lose hope in Nigeria. There are too many of us for us to lose hope. And I always say, we, as many of you as are in this room, you do not have the right to lose hope. Why? Because you are the privileged ones. If we give up, then we have failed the nation. Because there are many that do not have 0.0001% of the opportunities that we have, and yet they must survive this nation. And if we have an elite consensus that is for the right reasons, that we truly commit to knowing fully well when the country works, it actually works better for all of us. When we build the right institutions, we all benefit. When we build the right economy, it works for all of us, every single one of us, rich and poor. We will build a better country. Because at the end of the day, when you bring out your passport, and it doesn't matter if you have all those other passports, really, when you bring out your green passport, you want to proudly be able to say, I'm a Nigerian. You know, one of the saddest moments I always say, and it's part of how I feel sorry for all those that have to emigrate. If you get to a gathering of Nigerians anywhere in the world, no matter how long they have left, they only have one conversation. And what is that conversation? Nigeria. You can leave Nigeria, but Nigeria never leaves you. What does that tell us? We have an obligation to rebuild this country, to build it well, to do whatever we individuals can to ensure that we can give our country a chance to be what it has everything in it to be. But that will require every single one of us. We can hold the people in public service accountable. We can hold those in different offices accountable. There's a lot of failure across the board. But the integrity at the heart of each and every one of us. And because the banking sector plays a critical role in the economy, we need to challenge the industry and the players in terms of the integrity of the players, the value system of the players, and the values with which they play. But that's never going to happen until we have courageous leadership, we have a committed citizenry, and we ourselves are ready to kill the corruption that seems to show its head at every level, at policy making, in the actions of citizens, and in all the things that we do. And the banking sector is not left out of it at all. And because it's so critical to the economy, we should not, must not permit it to stand. Nigeria will be great before I die, I believe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, she deserves a bigger round of applause. I don't know if you noticed, she had no script. Whatever she did here on stage, she did it unscripted. Yes. Thank you very much. Mrs. Ibukwa Woshika, born prepared. It's not easy. I've seen a lot of men shake in front of the microphone. All right, ladies and gentlemen. I did promise in the beginning that time management is what I'll be doing in recognition of the fact that there are too many dignitaries here, men who their schedule is so tight, and we don't want to take it for granted that they've made time out this evening to come be with us. I also promise that in the course of this program, I'll be doing some recognition as soon as I have the list, because I don't want to leave anyone out. Shortly, with the aid of a video, I'll be introducing a team to the stage here. I prefer to use the word team. I wouldn't want to go near the word committee, because the definition of committee in Nigeria is not very good. It's not a positive one. In Nigeria, a committee is a group of people who can't do anything but come together to decide that nothing could be done. So I would rather choose the word team. Team, a group of highly skilled professionals working towards one positive goal. So ladies and gentlemen, a video will help me invite to this stage a great team. So please, wherever you are, once more, I crave your indulgence. Please, your eyes on the screen. Ladies and gentlemen, please a big round of applause, a big round of applause. Open our hands together. And please, can they step forward? Can they step forward? Can they please step forward? I will ask that you play that video again. It was so fast. I was enjoying it. Please, engineer, can you play me that video again while they come up here? Thank you. Please. Thank you, Victor Ndokuba. And also, Onaino. Christopher Omo. Please join us. Adedoyi Allen. Suru Daniels. Rita Abedogowe. Abiodun Kekpe. Ayodeji Ebo. Yes, the great team at Afrinvest. Thank you very much. Okay, while you still have your eyes on the screen, something special will happen. Gentlemen and ladies, please be patient with me. If the video, engineer, if you're still there, we're going to take. Here, ladies and gentlemen, we have the great ASCO of this powerful company. Next, please, with your eyes still on stage, on the screen. Whoever made that video, you committed a blunder. How could you have left out my Oga from that video? What kind of discrimination is that? Don't worry, I'll do a separate video. All right. I'm okay now. Engineer, don't kill me. All right, thank you. The next, I want the board. And fortunately, I have here Ike himself to help with this next level. Please, engineer, if you have the video for the board members, please, can we have that? Engineer, don't be lazy. Do it like the Oscars. Otherwise, I'll just simply hand over the mic to... Don't tell me you're looking for that clip. Okay. While the engineer is trying to figure himself out, let me hand over the microphone to our group CEO. He knows everyone, to bring them on stage. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to invite members of the board of the various companies of Afrinvest to please come on stage. I know that I'll start with the group company and my chairman, Mr. Donald Lawson. If you may come up, please. Are there any other members of the board of Afrinvest West Africa in the room, please? Kunle Abebi, I see you there. You're the company secretary. Please come up. Who? I'm going to ASL. Anybody else from Afrinvest West Africa? Okay, I'll move to Afrinvest Asset Management. I know the chairman of Afrinvest Asset Management is in the room, Mr. Abdurrahman Essene. Mr. Essene? I thought I saw him earlier. Any other members of the board of asset management? Yes, securities. Yeah. Last but not the least, Afrinvest Securities. I'm aware that the chairman is running a bit late, but I know that Priscilla is here. Priscilla? There she is. Coming up. A number of our directors, unfortunately, had commitments elsewhere and are not yet here. Okay. Okay, the video is now going. Okay, I have Professor Ositobu, who is traveling overseas. Tonino Dulate, who just had a baby, is not available. Who else? Onose is on the stage. She's our Chief Operating Officer. Donald Lawson is on the stage. She's our Chairman. Amal Hassan is the MD of Outsource Global. She's unfortunately traveling in the US at the moment. Ike Okeke should be here. Ike Okeke, are you in the room? Oh, he's traveling. Okay. Of Alpine. Okay, stuck on that. All right. Those are the... Yes. Okay, thank you. I'd like to hand over the mic to my chairman, who's going to do a special recognition for our SY Company Secretary, Mr. Kunle Agwebi. Okay. Where's the plaque?
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce our erstwhile Company Secretary, Mr. Olakunle Agbebi of Olakunle Agbebi & Co. He has been with us for 27 years now. He actually registered Sec Trust, and he's been with the company and has served the company so meritoriously. And it is our joy today, as he leaves the company, to present this plaque of recognition to him. Mr. Kunle Agbebi, from us to you. Thank you very much for your service. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Congratulations, sir.
I think we are now ready for the unveil.
Yes.
In preparing ourselves for our digital journey, we felt that we needed to make a tweak on our logo. The current Afrinvest logo, which is across the room and on your tables or different papers around, has been with us since 2007. It has served us faithfully. But around the time we're coming up to our 25th anniversary, in 2020, we began to think that we needed to have a more digitally enhanced and appropriate logo. Just when we're done with the planning for that, the COVID pandemic hit us and went on to lockdown. So we put that on hold along with a lot of other things. But I'm glad to inform you all that we shall be unveiling the new look of Afrinvest, because Afrinvest is metamorphosing into a digital investment bank with a new brand. But we also need to have the mother brand to be, digitally compliant. So we've tweaked a few things around the edges. There's a video that's going to explain how we arrived at this new logo. Please bear with us a few more minutes, and it's just going to play, and then the logo will be unveiled. Thank you very much.
And high net worth individuals. Our clients have trusted us for our professionalism, expertise, and commitment to delivering on our promises. To them, the Afrinvest Square symbolizes trust, stability, and reliability. Today, we are evolving into a more dynamic entity with future-forward thinking and the dependability we've always known. Welcome to the future of simplified investment and wealth creation.
big round of applause, please. Can we put our hands together? Can we put our hands together? Beautiful.
So that's the new logo. Has it been unveiled on that
Yes,
side?
it has. Please, if you pay attention to my extreme right there, you see the new logo all lit up there with the two ladies in green beside it. Yep. All right, once more, please, ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for this wonderful team doing great service at Afrinvest, please. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You can go take your seats. All the other thing. Okay, anniversary. Yeah. Yes. Thanks once again to this wonderful team. You know, at events like this, I get excited. You know, most times when we talk about Africa, and specifically Nigeria, because of what we are going through as a nation, sometimes we tend to forget some of the good things happening. You know, from day one, I think Africa was born ready, built ready. I know that at some point, our ancestors lost track. Before the coming of the missionaries and colonization, Africa was a sophisticated economy and continent, advanced in all ramifications. I don't want to talk about the pyramids in Egypt. No. Let me talk about Nigeria. We had our own way of life. We had our own social justice system. We had our own welfare system. You know, sometimes we criticize our country, especially our brothers who japa. They say, you know, when I get the opportunities to travel out and I meet them there, they say, okay, see this country. See how things they work. Light 2-4. Even if you're out of job, government will give you something to be managing until you get yourself back. You go on social welfare. But in Nigeria, we have all these things. Our culture has put in place some sort of social welfare system. But it's just that when you fall on hard times, no, it won't be government giving you small something to manage. We have our own social welfare system. When you fall on hard times, you simply find small transport, go your uncle's place. Asking wife whether soup day, he say, yes, madam, I beg, make it by your brother won't die. They will manage you, at least your sense returns. Same way we had our various ways of worship. In my community, before the coming of the early missionaries, we had our own system. But they came through the waters from the Niger Delta area, burnt our idols, gave us Bibles, baptized us. We went from traditional worshippers to Christians. And in those early days, as it was documented, once in a while, the early missionaries will go around the community to see how the early converts were doing. On this particular Friday, one of the missionaries, an Irish priest, Father Philip, was going through the village, checking the converts on a Friday, on a Good Friday. If you're Orthodox or Catholic, you know Good Fridays, you abstain from meat products. So on this particular day, Father Philip was going through the village, checking the early converts. When he got to the house of Brother Paul, a new convert, behold, Brother Paul and his family were having lunch fufu, bushmeat with vegetable soup. Oyibo priests looked inside their soup plate, saw the leg of the bushmeat, and shouted, "Brother Paul, are you eating meat on Good Friday?" Brother Paul said, "No, Father, it's not meat, it's fish." Oyibo shock. "Brother Paul, are you going to lie on Good Friday?" He said, "No, Father, I'm not lying. This is not meat, it's fish." Now, you can imagine the bewilderment of the white priest seeing the leg of antelope inside soup pot and this black man saying it's fish. He was confused. He said, "Brother Paul, you are a Christian. Are you going to lie?" He said, "Okay, Father, let me explain. I know you're confused. Father, you remember when you first came to my village? My name was Amadioha. But one day you brought me out in front of the church. You sprinkled water on me and you say, 'Amadioha, from today you're Paul.' And since then I've been Paul. I went into the farm to hunt and I killed this antelope. I told my wife to make soup. But I remembered it was Good Friday and we are not supposed to eat meat. So I took this antelope outside. I sprinkled water on it. And I said, 'Antelope, from now you are fish.' So, Father, this is no longer meat, it's fish." Father Philip laughed, said, "Brother Paul, you have no such powers." Brother Paul, Igbo man, he said, "Father, this is where you're causing problem now. If you can change a Omi Amadioha to Paul, I cannot change this small antelope to fish. Then this baptism is not working for us." You know, we had our own way of life, but things changed. You know, our ancestors were trustworthy. They were over-trusting, which is why people came in, despite they were fewer in number, convinced our people, and before you know, they were taking slaves on ships out of Africa to Europe and to North America. You know, they took us by surprise. How many years after slavery, now that people are really ready to travel to America, bring ship, they no agree bring ship again. Is it even really fair? If they are ready now, let them try and bring any ship now to Apapa Wharf. I dare them to bring any ship to Apapa Wharf and to say, "Oh yeah, if you want to go to North America, come." These guys took us by surprise. Now that we are ready to go abroad, they have put embassies everywhere to stop people. And that is why people are complaining. Then even when you manage to get the visa and find yourself at their point of entry, immigration will be asking you. The last time I was in the States, we got to the immigration point and they say, "What are you coming to the States to do today?" I said, "I can't check my ancestors. The people who want to carry on and not bring them back." So community sponsored me and said, "Come and check if they are still around." They look me like TV. All right, ladies and gentlemen, today, in addition to the banking sector report, the unveiling of the new logo, we are also celebrating the 27th anniversary of this great institution. Please, a round of applause. Please, it's not easy to sustain an African brand for 27 years. They've really done very well. So I think it deserves celebration, which is why we have here the anniversary cake. Of course, we're going to cut that cake. I'd like to once more invite Ike, please. You know, I'm going to overwalk you today, please. Please, a round of applause. Encourage him to come forward. He's going to help me with those who will stand beside him as we cut this anniversary cake. I also know we are going to raise a toast to that. Please, can we get some assistance? We want to move it a little further so that enough people can queue behind it. Where are the gentlemen who set this up? Can you still help us move it a little forward? Thank you. Not just sideways, forward. More. Okay, that's not too forward. Okay. Okay. I know you won't be doing this alone, sir. So, would you help me? Okay. Let me start with our keynote speaker. Please, Mrs. Buku, join us here. Please, can we encourage her another round of applause, please? Chairman, of course, you know, Chairman, you belong here now. All right? Even without saying it, you know. All the board members, please join us once present. Onose, where are you? Mrs. Priscilla, please join us. The DG of SEC, please, can you join us? I see my very good friend here. Mike, how are you? Mr. Gabriel Obecha, please, can you join us, sir? Mr. Mohammed Hayatuddin, his posters has been, okay. Mr. Lamido Yuguda, please, can you please join us, sir? Yeah, I think we have more than enough people. Okay, we need a knife. Knife. If it was in the days of the old, there would be one knife underneath any of these agbada. Knife. Okay. You want to borrow this one from the table. We'll improvise if that is. It's gold anyway, so. Madam, do us the honors of looking for some. I'm not saying cut. I'm just help us place it anywhere you like, strategically. Yeah. Okay. All right.
As an entrepreneur who has survived business in Nigeria for almost 35 years now, I can confidently congratulate Afrinvest for 27 years of an enterprise in the Nigerian environment. We build great companies. We suffer to build it, but we do. And it's also why we build innovative companies. Because when we go to bed every night, we never know what problem we'll wake up to in the morning. But Nigerians are great at always finding solutions so we can move on. So on account of your ability to have survived 365 times 27, somebody else can do the maths, then you deserve the celebration and the honor. So on behalf of the rest of us who are not members of the Afrinvest Direct family, we want to congratulate you for the success and the greatness and the continuous greatness of the company, and for also producing for us an obviously brilliant governor doing something great because of the pedigree that he has from building a great company as well. And we wish you greater things as you go into the digital space, and we hope that you'll be part of those who will redefine the financial services sector in Nigeria. And thank you for every single report, because you're keeping us on our toes, making the industry better. Thank you. Let's put our hands together for Afrinvest. So who's going to call the cut of the cake? Okay. Yeah, we'll just stretch our hands. And what do you want to call? Who is counting? Okay, we'll count to 27 down. Okay. 27, 20, 17, 10, 7, 1, 0.
Play something. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mrs. Awoshika. Thank you so much.
Thank you, gentlemen, ladies, thank you. All right, in that same spirit of celebration, please, wherever you are now, please, can we charge our glasses? Can we charge our glasses? Let's raise a toast to this great company. Please charge your glasses, and let's raise a toast, please, wherever you are. Please charge up those glasses. If it's wine, it's water, whatever you want in your glass. Please, can we charge those glasses? And let's raise a special toast, wherever you are.
I am Afrinvest. Afrinvest is a focus on Africa. Afrinvest is a proven record of success.
Charge those glasses, hold it up.
Afrinvest is impartial and independent.
I need to see glasses in hands.
Afrinvest is a customized approach. Afrinvest is a reputation of integrity. I am a focus on Africa through a global lens. I am a proven record of success molded by hard work and commitment. I am impartial and independent.
Please rise with your glasses in your hands, ladies and gentlemen. Let us rise, let us rise. Glass in hands.
I am a customized approach.
Glass in hands, thank you.
Harnessing
Let's
my
just do this
initiative.
Thank you.
I am a reputation of integrity. My word, my bond. I am Afrinvest.
Cheers. You can clean glasses. Go ahead, do it. With that piece of poetry from my very good friend. Thank you very much. Cheers. 27 years of accomplishment. Another 27 years of still maintaining the lead, doing great strides, breaking new grounds. Afrinvest. Thank you very much. Although I did not see small wine in this glass, they just gave me empty glass, but it's okay. God is watching the person that gave me this glass.
One love,
yes.
one heart, let's stand together and feel alright. One love, one heart, let's give thanks to the Lord and we will be alright. Everybody singing one love, one heart, let's stand together and feel alright.
Okay.
One love.
Thank you. Please, once more, very distinguished guest, I would like us to still keep our eyes on the screen as we take this special goodwill message.
Good evening, Chairman Afrinvest, members of the Board of Directors of Afrinvest, our keynote speaker, my sister, Mrs. Ibukun Awushika, other distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I am delighted to extend my congratulations to the board, management, and staff of Afrinvest, and especially my friend and brother, Ike Chioke, on this special occasion of the Afrinvest Sparkle. Afrinvest Sparkle is a day the firm has set aside to celebrate many milestones, including the launch of its 2022 Nigerian Banking Sector Report, the celebration of its 27th anniversary, and the announcement of new business expansion initiatives. I remember with nostalgia and fondness the humble beginnings of the Afrinvest journey when I set up SecTrust in 1995 as a research-driven brokerage firm, which was unheard of in Nigeria at that time. By 2006, SecTrust had morphed into Afrinvest. Afrinvest had in turn grown from one legal entity into 7 companies, including offering services in securities trading, investment banking, trusteeship, asset management, investment research, consultancy, and financial technology to its diverse clients. Clearly, this impressive growth is a testament to the stellar leadership provided by the board and executive management, of which I am very, very proud. I'm also aware the firm is launching its first digital strategy today, which assures growth and competitive repositioning in the decades. Of course, all these innovations and accomplishments would not have been possible without the support of valued clients and stakeholders. I would like to encourage and inspire the new leaders within the firm to take opportunity of an expanding platform to build successful careers and keep conquering new horizons. Once again, I am humbled to have been the first firework that ignited this amazing journey being chronicled today as Afrinvest Sparkle. Congratulations to everyone. Thank you very much, and God bless all of you.
Yeah, that deserves a round of applause. Yeah, we all understand how busy His Excellency is at this time, and despite all that, has made our time to send us this goodwill message via video. We appreciate. All right, shortly we are going to go into a panel session, but before then, please permit me to invite Mr. Victor Ndokoba. Mr. Victor, please, can you join me on stage? Please, a round of applause. Please, let us appreciate Victor. Encourage him, encourage him. All right, Victor, we'll be doing this together. We need to bring on the panelists. This one is your thing. This is your office. In fact, let me yield to you. If you need my assistance, I won't be far. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. MC. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to stand on existing protocols. For the panel session will happen shortly after this presentation. I was supposed to have 40 minutes for this, but I'll try to breeze through in 30 minutes. The title of this year's report is titled Brace for Impact, and we will be chronicling the journey of the Nigerian banking sector in, please next slide, in a number of sections. I think there are 5 sections. Next slide, please. Please go back to the TOC. Thank you. So the report is, this presentation is in 5 sections, starting first with a look at the global macro environment, and then we'll dovetail to Nigeria's macro environment, and then section 3 then narrows down to the Nigerian banking sector. We'll look at its performance overall. Section 4 touches on valuation of banks, and then finally we land on the final section that looks at what then should the banks be looking to do. So let's start with section 1, the macro section. Please, next slide. Next slide. So we started 2022 with rather moderate expectations. We had seen a very sharp recovery in 2021 following what happened with COVID. However, the low base effects of those adjustments meant that coming into 2022, we didn't expect as much or as strong a growth as we had seen in 2021. And the outlook for next year, 23, is even more subdued, mostly for the global economy itself, for advanced economies, as well as the Euro area countries. Sub-Saharan Africa, however, and what we know as emerging markets or developing economies, would not see as much of a reduction between this current year, 2022, and next year. Next slide. On this slide, we see that 2 things have happened primarily this year to shape the outlook of the global economy. One is the geopolitical tensions in Europe, given the conflict that was sparked by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And that has had a consequential impact on commodity prices. Notably, it has impacted the crude oil markets and all of the ancillary industries around it, extractive metals, as well as agriculture commodities. And we've seen all of those spikes essentially feed into what is effectively high prices of wheat, which obviously impacts things like bread, pasta, and the rest of that. Natural gas prices have gone up, of course, on account of that conflict. And Brent crude itself has also somewhat spiked. Next slide. When you put all that together, what exactly happens is that everybody is then struggling with a lot of inflation. So we've seen very, very, very strong inflationary pressure, the likes that haven't been seen in as many as 20 years. And it cuts across everywhere. So from the US, where we've seen the US Fed adjust rates at least 5 times just to try and contain inflation. The same thing is happening in the UK. There have been at least 4 adjustments in the UK as well. Same with Brazil, India. Our next door neighbors, Ghana, also struggling quite a bit, as we ourselves have. Today, inflation is north of 20%, approaching 21. Again, all of this is just the impact of what effectively is high oil prices, high commodity prices, and the pressure of the conflict that we talked about. Next slide. What this has meant for banks is that it's been a mixed bag as you go across from market to market. When you look at capital adequacy, ratios, you look at the cost of risk, which is basically what it costs to operate a bank. You look at how much loans banks are lending, it's against their deposits, the returns that banks are declaring across board. It's a mixed bag, once you go from one market to the other. But the global economy is one thing, and global banking is one thing. But then when we then come back down to Africa, we see slight differences. But we can see that basically on the basis of global average, most banks remain adequately capitalized. However, the cost of risk has gone up in many instances, as has the cost to income also slightly more, ticked up, because again, this is the feed through of high inflation. Next slide. In the next section, we'll then look at Nigeria's macro environment more closely, starting with what is effectively real GDP growth. And we can go as far back as 2014, when we had what was considered perhaps the strongest growth in the last decade, perhaps. At the time, we were growing at 6.2%. We moderated in 2015 to 2.8. Of course, that was brought on by some of the corrections that happened in 2014 with oil price decline, and of course the transition that then happened in 2015, which, if you recall, with the swearing in of a new government, there was quite a bit of change that occurred, even down to a cabinet and the delays in setting that up. We've seen 2 recessions in the past 7-8 years. First, there was 2016, where the economy contracted by 1.5%, and then a slightly, deeper contraction in 2020. Of course, that was expected, given what had happened with COVID. The economy rebounded very strongly last year, from that negative 1.9 to 3.1%, 3.4, I beg your pardon, and has been projected to grow at roughly the same rate for the next 2 years. While this is positive, some of us would observe that it is not quite as strong as we would like to see, given the fact that our population grows at right about 2.7 to 3%. So we need to be doing much faster growth to essentially help propel people out of poverty. Next slide. This slide shows an oil sector that essentially has been shrinking in terms of its contribution to GDP, to economic activity. So when you look at growth and what is driving growth, you would observe that increasingly the non-oil sector continues to contribute more and more to Nigeria's growth. And I think the stories, as we all know, recent times, some of the fines about vandalism and theft have all obviously alluded to this fact. Next slide, please. What this has meant, unfortunately, is that whereas other oil-producing countries have seen both a strengthening of their currency and very positive returns in terms of revenues from oil, we haven't had the privilege of enjoying any benefits so far. I do recall that, I think it was last week, we were looking at the data and realized that Angola's currency has strengthened by as much as 47% on account of the strength of, on account of strengthening in oil prices. We haven't had that benefit, unfortunately, because whereas we're supposedly an oil-producing country, we actually don't have the oil to sell. Inflation has therefore remained persistently high. We've touched on what has happened globally, the global conflict, commodity prices, and the feed-through effects of that. Of course, we import a lot of wheat, we import pasta, and that has fed through, and we've seen this impact. So we anticipate that the average inflation rate for the year will end at about 18.3%, even though it is currently north of 20, at least approaching 21. But when you take that average for the year, we've seen that if you look at it from 2019, it's been on a steady increase. And these pressures will still persist, given some of what we anticipate would happen. This next slide touches on the exchange rates. One is the official, the NAFEX rate, and then there's the parallel market rate. We've seen that there has been a lot of divergence, as it were, when you look at that official, which is the orange line, compared to the black market or the parallel market, as it's called, the blue line. So that expansion continues to spread, and that spread is quite significant. Today, it is north of 300 naira. It's not, it has therefore not lent itself to a lot of capital flows. Now, what has this done for us? When we look at the 2023 budget and what has been put together, there's an aggregate spend of about 20.5 trillion. What is expected to be the revenue here is just under 10 trillion, 9.7. What that means, in effect, is that we will have to then borrow as much as 11 trillion again. This is one of the worrisome things, because when we look at the data for this year, for example, and we see how much of our revenues goes into debt service. Debt service meaning how much monies we spend paying the interest on the monies that are outstanding. As the last check, we were already seeing numbers that are north of 100%, meaning we're spending more than our revenues to service our debt. So that's worrying when we then put it, with the picture that is in front of us. Non-debt recurrent expenditure is about 8.3 trillion. This number has grown quite significantly, at least doubled from about 2015. Capital expenditure has somewhat stabilized at 5.4, but again, there's a key question here, which is around the revenues itself, and whether or not we can actually come close enough to the 9.7 that's been projected for this year. This chart is one of the most scary charts when we think about what has happened to the country. So for a long time, our debt levels sort of grew at about 2% on average over a very long period of nearly 10 years, between 2000 or between 1999, when we returned to democracy, and 2009. Starting in 2010, we saw that the scale at which debt grew was about 20%. Again, we can touch on some of the factors that drove this, where we took to oil prices, and those fed through to what was effectively a higher borrowing by that administration to try and keep the ship of state balance. Of course, there was also a high subsidy bill that kicked in 2011, and which sort of showed itself again towards 2014 and then entering 2015. But from 2016, we've seen a very sharp spike in the level of accumulation of debt. And we've gone from about 12.6 trillion of debt in 2015 to today just nearly 43 trillion. Let's talk about how some of this has obviously gone into funding some infrastructure. But then also we do recognize that the government has had to struggle, particularly of our GDP it represents in terms of a ratio. And then there's also the debt service to revenue. How much of the income you earn goes into paying your cost of borrowings. And then similarly, there's external debt service to oil revenue. So when we look at the oil revenues, how much of it goes into servicing debt? So we can see that while debt to GDP is still somewhat manageable levels, because the threshold or the recommended sort of safety margin is about 40%. However, on the debt service, or perhaps even as a business, one thing you know that when lenders or banks discuss with you, one thing they always try to do is to try and keep whatever your debt repayment obligations are to less than a third of your income. So at this level, we are really, really in trouble. This particular chart shows what has happened with our budgeting and the split between recurrent expenditure and capital. So you would notice that the blue line, the blue dotted line, represents our recurrent expenditure, while the orange line is capital expenditure. So starting from 2009, when we had a margin of about 1 trillion between both, that margin has continued to expand quite aggressively to the point where, as of last year, we were essentially spending 6.7 trillion more on recurrent expenditure than we were on capital. I'll let that sink in. Now, banks operate within this environment, right? So, for all who can imagine, what banks do is essentially intermediate the economy. They take money from areas of surplus and then lend it to where there's a deficit. So whether it is corporate or it is the government. For the purpose of our analysis, we would normally look at a universe that is represented by listed companies, but on this page, we try to show all the players in the banking space as regulated by the central bank, starting with the 8 banks that have an international designation, national banks, Access, FCMB, Fidelity, First Bank, Guarantee Trust Bank, UBA, Union Bank, and Zenith. And then there are 11 banks with national licenses, including Citi, EcoBank, Bank PHB Heritage, Keystone, Polaris, Stanbic, Sterling, Titan Trust. Some specialized banks. First with 5 regional banks, and then 6 merchant banks, and then 3 non-interest banking institutions, including Jais, Lotus, and Taj. While that is the universe we look at, we, however, are limited to a universe of 13 banks, which is analysis. And the reason is simple. These are the banks that are publicly traded, and therefore their information is readily available from the market, and this makes the analysis easier because the information is public. So what have we seen between the 2021 report and the 2022 report? We'll start by looking at the total assets. We've seen that there has been a consolidation. Now, in terms of the color coding, you would notice that there are 4 bars. The green bar represents total assets. The orange represents gross loans. The blue line represents investment securities. And then the gray, other assets. So what you would notice is that across board, there has been growth, there has been increase. So total assets have grown. Same with loans, same with securities, and other assets. To the right of that chart, you find that there are 2 sets of bars comparing what is effectively tier 1 banks and tier 2 banks. And for us, that distinction is a function of the balance sheet size, how much those banks hold in total assets, and I think the threshold is 4 trillion. So we have on the left 62.3% of the industry assets were controlled by tier 1 banks. That ratio has inched up slightly, meaning that the top tier banks have not lost ground against competition. If anything, it has somewhat strengthened, if you'd say, even though the numbers haven't moved by much. Similarly for tier 2 banks. So there's a bit of stability there in terms of competition and market share. The next slide we look at on the left, that data then looks at your total liabilities. Here we see that there's been quite a bit of increase as well. So liabilities have grown from 54 trillion to 63. Similarly for deposits, borrowings remain somewhat flat. Now, a lot of these borrowings are typically foreign borrowings that are backed by your DFIs, development finance institutions, more often than not in foreign currency. So the fact that it hasn't increased obviously is a function of some of what we've seen with the challenges in the FX market. But overall, when we look at deposits, which is the chart to the right, there has been more consolidation seen here by tier 1 banks as against tier 2 banks. So their share of the market has gone from 63% to 64%. And then for tier 2 banks, moderated slightly from nearly 37 to just under 36%. What you then find is that for total gross earnings, again, we've seen quite a bit of increase between 2020 and 2021. So industry earnings have gone up from 5 trillion to 5.6. Interest income has also gone up, as well as non-interest income. So there's been uniform growth across board. However, when we look at gross earnings by market share for tier 1 banks, it has weakened just slightly, 1 percentage point, from 62.9 to 61.8 for tier 1 banks. So perhaps the argument is that tier 2 banks, even though they lost ground somewhat on balance sheet size, in terms of earnings, they perhaps performed stronger. One of the things that has obviously driven income for banks has been digital channels. And I think, again, it stands to reason, given what happened with COVID in 2020, which forced a shift in consumer or customer behavior for the most part. Prior to 2020, there was all of the policy of cashless, which was implemented largely in Lagos and to some extent in Abuja and maybe Port Harcourt. But we saw a lot more adoption, given the fact that people were not able to move around for very long periods in 2020. And that has helped to drive the fee and commission income of banks. So that has fed through to the non-interest income. The slide on the left is the chart on the right shows what each person has done in terms of absolute growth. And some of the biggest gainers there are the likes of UBA that saw a 46% growth in that segment, same with Zenith. So they obviously brought to bear the sheer muscle behind their scale and size. Honorable mention, we look at Union Bank, 26%, as well as Sterling, which is also nearly 36% up as well. So you can see that some of these guys have begun to turbocharge their engines. FCMB didn't do too badly, nearly 50% up as well. So I think the race is on for what happens with digital. In terms of interest expense, clearly interest costs have gone up 12% year on year. And again, this is logical. It's a consequential impact of what we've seen as high inflation and pass-through effects. Banks have also struggled with talent, and so in many cases have had to adjust remuneration to try and retain some of their key personnel. But when we look at the right, which is the cost of funds, that is how much it costs banks to source their deposits, you'll find that there's a bifurcation. So tier 2 banks tend to pay more than tier 1 banks. Again, some of it is based on perception, some is based on size, and the fact that for the bigger banks who don't need as much liquidity, when you take into account some of the challenges with the CBN's policy around CRR, you can see that the tier 2 banks had to pay more, on average about 3.4% compared to the 2% that it cost tier 1 banks. So nearly 60% more.
Give me mic. Hello. I was wondering if you have some of these things as handouts so that we can take you home. Because it's becoming a bit too long. Eh?
I will try
okay,
to
so
I'll wish you the rest of it. Almost done.
I just cut it short so that I can bring the panelists. You know you're still hanging out with the panelists. Yes.
So in terms of cost to income, which is how much they spend for every naira they earn, on average is about 64%. For both tier 1 and tier 2 banks, you'll find that there's a bit of a convergence in terms of that metric. So I think perhaps the industry has equalized around a certain threshold, which is 62%. This slide shows what is happening with return on assets. It's weakened over time, and this is despite the fact that the bottom line has improved. And on the right, you see that return on equity has also dropped off quite precipitously in the last couple of years, but still struggles to maintain a positive uptrend. This chart basically just shows the exposure of banks to various sectors in the economy, and the size of each of those blocks represents its representative share. The largest exposure clearly is downstream oil and gas sector at 17%, then manufacturing at 16.6%, general services, and then to the government just under 10%. Upstream oil and gas is 6%, agri 6%, construction 4%, and the rest. So the smallest boxes there are education at 0.3% and mining and quarrying, which is 0.1%. Now, what has happened with NPLs or non-performing loans? So we've seen essentially a spike, which happened in 2017, but then that has begun to moderate and has now dropped below the regulatory threshold of 5%. Again, this is speaking specifically to the 13 banks. When we look at the entire industry, that number is still slightly elevated at 6% on average for the previous year, but down to 4.9%. And then each of the banks there, in terms of NPLs, you see that there are just a few that stand out in terms of that threshold. So First Bank, GT, ETI, particularly, show very high NPLs. This slide just looks at two key metrics, so you may just want to focus on that shaded gray at the end when we look at capital adequacy and we measure it. So for virtually the banks in our coverage, they are all comfortable, save for some concern around ETI, where there are concerns around this tier 1 capital, the core tier 1, as well as the overall capital adequacy ratios, which is slightly below the regulatory threshold. Now, when we take a look into the future and say, what can we expect of the banking sector in terms of opportunity, what are the things we want to see? So first is strong and stable growth sectors. So these are the areas where banks need to look at: ICT, financial and insurance, and then what is called water supply, sewage, water management, and reticulation. So that's one area that perhaps they want to pay attention to. There are still some weak sectors, but somehow are stable. So we look at agriculture, manufacturing, construction. While there's some weakness, they still represent some stability. There are some strong but volatile sectors, and here you find mining, you find trade, and then transport. EGS is basically looking at electricity, both supply and then gas, and all of the other things around that, air conditioning. We then have weak but volatile growth sectors, and these are essentially accommodation and food services, which is counterintuitive because you think that people must always have accommodation or they must eat. But then when you think about what inflation is going to do to food prices, you can understand why there's a concern around that. Real estate, continually, and then professional and administrative services. One of the issues that banks are dealing with, obviously, is rising price levels or expensive cost of doing business. And we think this is going to persist into next year. High inflation will feed into its operating cost as well as into interest rate adjustments. So on both fronts, they are going to be buffeted. We've seen at least 3 adjustments already to MPR, and we think that may continue. That's a reminder that we are still not out of the woods. An opportunity for people who can fund electricity and the sector. Waiting for the slides to come back on.
Hello. Victor.
Yes, please.
Is it possible that we can just go into the panel session?
I'm at the end.
Are you getting to
5
the
minutes.
end of it?
5 minutes.
No, 5 minutes is too much. Oh. I don't have 5 minutes. I can give you 2 minutes.
Okay, we'll try and do that. So what are the key risk areas for banks? We've touched on costs, OPEX, we've touched on talent, and then of course there's the broader macro issues which you have to deal with. I'm going to have to walk very quickly through this section, which is sector valuations, essentially. We've seen quite a bit of a reduction or a drop in prices of banks, generally speaking. And when we look at it in terms of performance on the exchange, you see that banks have returned negative. Here shows the various indices that are captured by the Nigerian Exchange Limited, and you see that banking is negative. So this is where banks are priced in terms of price to book value. And there's a list, and you see the average. So some are priced quite well. GT continues to be strong, Zenith and Stanbic. When we then compare Nigerian banks to peers, you find that they're priced at a bit of a discount. So where the peer average, which is obviously buoyed by South Africa and Morocco, you find that Nigeria, Ghana and Egypt, and perhaps Kenya are laggards. But again, that speaks to opportunity. When we expand this to the BRIC nations, we see that also Nigerian banks are priced at quite a bit of a discount. So South Africa obviously is a key driver, India as well. But China has seen a bit of a correction, as has Brazil, given some of the issues that are more local to those markets. Putting everything together, what are the salient points going into 2023? We have issues around growth, revenue growth for the country. We have issues around internal security, public sector accountability in terms of numbers and how it's put together. There are issues around national cohesion and just nation building. And then finally, the constitutional issues as well as capacity of government and governance. For us, we see certain pertinent agenda. You have 4 pillars we would like to touch on. And what you find is that at the top, which are the key drivers of the conversation, we have things around, revenue, stability and sustainability of revenues. We have, policy, consistency, national planning, and then there are certain action points as to what needs to be done to achieve key objectives in terms of, for example, when we talk about revenue, stability, public policy and all that, what are the metrics we need to see? Revenue levels compared to OPEX, compared to recurrent expenditure, debt levels and sustainability. You touched on talent and what banking should do in terms of funding growth for certain key sectors and all of that. Ultimately, what are the things that the CBN can do to help? Is it willing to help? Can it help? We believe that price stability is one, and we've seen the CBN quite aggressively step up this. We think that's a positive, very responsive. Exchange stability is one that still needs quite a bit of work, and we hope that that can come through, both in terms of banking regulation as well, monetary policy and strategy, as well as government's banker. Now, that last point is where there's been quite a bit of concern around how much support the central bank continues to extend to the government. This slide basically just adjusts historical earnings back 10 years and tries to say, has there been a real return when we adjust for inflation? So all the very high numbers we see in green bars, which represent revenue growth or profitability by banks, when you adjust with inflation over 10 years, the numbers are not as great. So basically, inflation is a thief of returns. In terms of what to do for banks, they need to keep their eyes on cost. They have to look at improving returns despite the challenges in the economy. How much quicker can they turn around their assets? Keeping their eyes on loan to deposits. Of course, there's all of the concerns around CBN's cash reserve ratio and the implications for that. Ultimately, we get to the end of this. Now, the picture that we have in Nigeria today is one where there's quite a bit of concern, doom, but also all of those concerns present opportunity. Now, what are some of the things that can be done, or what are the steps or measures that we expect on the policy side that can then help reflate things? We've touched on 2 things in green bars. One obviously is petrol subsidies, and the other is regulatory reforms around subsidies and theft. Now, what do they have in terms of implications, short term and long term? In the short term, there will be some pain, because where you do go ahead with subsidy removal, it has a very negative impact in the short term on price levels and therefore affordability and all that. But in the long term, should stabilize and at least release quite a bit of revenue for the benefit of the economy. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of the presentation. We would try now to set up a panel to very quickly touch on some of these issues and to answer some questions that are pertinent.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Victor. Ladies and gentlemen, you agree with me that
Mr. Victor deserves a round of applause. Please put your hands together.
It is not easy to stand here and reel out all these statistics. Though I will go to my it's not easy to do what he does. Although sometimes as a novice, I wonder, if you have an investor who is illiterate, how do you explain a lot of these things to them? It will be a whole lot.
I think you should unveil the report first before we do this panel.
Okay. So who will unveil the report? Yeah, because I can imagine trying to explain this thing to a billionaire who did not go to school, and once you bring out all these charts and all these things, the man will go bonkers. Which is why, those days when bank has employed a lot of young pretty girls to help them get accounts, they were really very successful. Because those girls will not come explaining all these bar charts and all these pie charts. They will just tell you, I will open it for you if you put small thing inside. And when the man hears, I will open it for you, you put small thing inside. Even if it's big or small, no problem. It's okay. And before you know, you open an account where you don't even get money to run. Simple and straightforward. Communication made easy. All right? But it's okay. For those of us who are investment inclined, who are smart, you understand the importance of all these things. So before we bring the panel on, I just got word that we need to unveil the report. So after the unveiling of the report, we'll bring in the panelists. Please, it's important that we experience all these things. That is why we are here today. So let me once more bring on the CEO. Sir, please, one more time, a round of applause for Mr. Ike. Let's unveil the report, then we'll invite the panelists and we'll take it from there. Thank you. Okay. Together. Okay. So while our crew is doing everything possible to put the report together, okay, we are almost there. Shortly we'll unveil our report. We'll invite our panelists. I know them. I have their names here. Once I invite the panelists, Mr. Victor will join us once more because he will be moderating that segment, and we'll carry on with that business. But for now, it's unveiling of that report. Those of us in the banking sector, those with interest in investment banking, you all know how important this is. It is the meat of the matter. And at some point too, I'm sure that we are going to get all these plates in front of you busy. I see plates, I see cutlery, and like some of you, I'm wondering where is the food. It will soon come, because we are also aware that all work and no food now make Jack die. So We are not going to let anything happen to you. We've got you. We've got you. All right? We have it all set. Yep. I guess we are clear to go now. All right. The microphone is all yours, sir.
Thank you. Once again, I'd like to thank Victor Ndukuba, the Group Managing Director, for an excellent job presenting the report. I know it's a bit long, but like our keynote speakers said earlier, the executive summary alone is 26 pages. Being mindful that some of our key guests are about to leave because they have multiple commitments this evening, we'd like to unveil the report before we go into the panel of discussions. So permit me to invite a few people to join us at the front here to unveil the report, starting with my chairman, Mr. Donald Lawson. Please, a round of applause for him. I would also like to invite my regulator, the DG of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Mr. Lamido Yaguda, please. My pleasure to invite the chairman of Afrinvest Securities, Mrs. Fatimata Koka. I also like to invite the chairman of Afrinvest Asset Management, Mr. Abdurrahman Essene. I'd like to invite the managing director, CEO of Rain Oil, Mr. Gabriel Ogbeche. I'd also like to invite my good friend, Ejovi Aro of IPNX. Please join us. Victor, you probably need to come down to our level. Yes. My chairman, please join us. Yeah? Thank you. You. No, not. This is my guy here. Please. Anyway. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, this report has a unique a title that says Brace for Impact. When we say Brace for Impact, it's not to suggest there's any harm that's going to happen. I think the message we are trying to pass with this report is that we all recognize that things are difficult for Nigeria today. We are living in an oil boom without any oil revenue. And the indices are there for all of us to feel. You know, high inflation, high debt to GDP, high debt to revenue, debt service to revenue, and all the attendant issues for governance and the society. But we believe that coming into the new year with an election coming, that any leadership that has the motivation to fix this problem, no matter how well intended they are, fixing the problem will create more hardship for Nigerians. But we all recognize we need to fix the problem. And that's the situation, that's the reason why we titled the report Brace for Impact, because we need to fix the problem, but fixing the problem will still cause more problems in the short term, hopefully, and then from there we can bounce back and begin to live a proper life as a country. So on that note, I'd like to invite everyone to please point their hearts towards, and at the count of 27 again, we'll pull the veil, counting down, 27, 20, 26, 15, yes. 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Please pick up a report and hold it upright. It's a DG, Chairman. Thank you. Thank you.
Brace for Impact.
So that's our 2022 banking sector report, ladies and gentlemen. Congratulations to the entire research team headed by Abiodun Keribe. Abiodun, please come and join us quickly. Hurry up.
When you see a title like Brace for Impact, I begin to wonder, is that a warning?
It sounds like what a pilot tells passengers. If the 2022 report is brace for impact, is that sounding the alarm? Find out more when you pick up a copy of this report. By the way, it's not an excuse for you to jackpot, not because they say brace for impact. You take off. Nobody is going anywhere. We are all here together. Okay. With that done, it's now time to invite the panelists. We're going to do this quickly.
There's a QR code on the table.
Okay, so not now. Okay, please let me invite the distinguished members of this panel. Victor will be moderating. Please, I'd like to invite to join us here on the panel, Dr. Kumbi Wurola, Vice President, Director, Policy and Partnership, Africa, New Globe. Dr. Kumbi Wurola. Please, a round of applause for Dr. Kumbi to join us here. Please, if you want to clap, please appreciate, make it louder, make it warm, make it nice. Please do it for her. Thank you. Next to join us. Here, madam. Next to join us on the panel is the CEO, Jobberman Nigeria, Oluwa Boboye. Please, a round of applause for Oluwa. Please, a round of applause. Please, can we just, those in charge of food, please, you can see that the energy in the hall is going down. Please, maybe, Mike, hold on now, wait a minute. Sit down, I'm coming. Right, and finally, the CEO and co-founder, Cowrywise. A round of applause for Razak Ahmed. Razak Ahmed, please join us. Please, a round of applause for Razak Ahmed. Razak, maybe this way, yes. All right, Victor, they are all yours.
All right. Okay.
I guess everyone has a mic. You have a mic? Fine.
Yes.
Good.
Okay. I believe I'm good. Okay. You can all hear me? Good. So thank you to the panelists for agreeing to join us for this. Again, in the interest of time, we'll try to keep this short and punchy. I'd like to start on the angle of human capital. And Dr. Kumbi, please, I would like to start with you. One of the issues we've had to grapple with as corporate Nigeria of late has been the exodus, large-scale migration of talented workers across the chain, especially at the middle to senior management cadre levels, many of whom are exiting the country with family. This has placed a strain on many businesses in terms of hiring, placed a challenge on businesses in terms of talent sourcing to replace those that are exiting. Given the outlook, some would argue that this isn't new, but how do you see this within the context of what is required to help build and strengthen this economy?
All right, that's for me, right?
So we'll go to Dr. Kumbi first,
okay,
and then the question will also come to you.
Okay, so I'll say that good evening, everyone. Excuse my manners. It's a pleasure for me to be here and to be seated. Blessed am I amongst the men on this side of the hall. The Japa syndrome, because that's what I'm going to call it, and that's what a lot of people have been saying, is indeed something we truly must be concerned about. Yes, we have talked about brace for impact, but there are turbulent times ahead. And I'm sure the HR and the talent acquisition units in all our organizations have this challenge. So how does it affect us? Let me backtrack to where my own expertise is, which is in education. When you have the crop of your trained, experienced, and those who should take up the leadership of corporates, Nigeria, and even in the civil service are leaving, then it means that you have people who ordinarily are not qualified to take those positions that are left behind. And what has happened was a recent report says that we have a crisis. We've always been saying we have crisis in education, but it is even much more alarming now, because the report from World Bank that came out in August says that 70% of the 10-year-olds in Nigeria cannot read a simple sentence. Did you hear that? 70% of 10-year-olds in Nigeria cannot read a simple sentence. So what we have is learning poverty. If you take that higher, it simply means that those who should take on the roles that are vacant are not equipped. And so we have to go back 20, 25 years. That is what is going to start happening in the next few months, next few years, that we're going to see that this is the challenge we have. But for those who are in the banking or investment sector, for those who have jackpot, so this is the other good side of it. We're going to have some of them who have taken their family, their spouses, and so there's going to be repatriation. Money is going to come back to Nigeria because they did not take maybe their fathers or their uncles and aunts. So money will come back, but at what expense? At whose expense? Let me pause there so that others can share their own thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kumbi. Oraoluwa, please, perhaps you may want to then chime in at this point.
Yes.
Given what you do,
okay.
How much of inbound traffic have you seen from Nigerians in diaspora looking to lend their expertise back home to help with this rebuild, if at all? Or if you haven't seen that, what do you think can be done to foster or facilitate such a transfer of capacity?
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. Let me first start by saying that JAPMA is not, talent exodus is not a new concept. But however, it's actually different this time because there is no strategy to it. So if you, and I try to take things from the definition of it. So what is JAPMA? JAPMA is a Yoruba word, by the way. It means to escape, to run away from something, right? To be set free, pretty much, right? So the danger to the Nigerian corporate is that we then have a lot of people, mid-level, senior level, that should build our corporate structure, right? Going out, and then we have a very serious talent gap and productivity gap. And just to piggyback a little bit on what the keynote speaker mentioned, it means that in the next few months, a lot of companies will focus on training instead of growing, right? So productivity will drop. It just depends on whether you decide to acknowledge it and take stock of it. And that is a big concern. Now, how do you, back to your question, are there instances of people, coming back home to fill that gap? I don't have empirical data, unfortunately, but people are jackbuying from something, right? So it's very obvious that the encouragement to come back is not there. But what a lot of firms have done, what I have done, for instance, in Jobberman, is to create a bridge. So, of course, I've also experienced my own wave of JAPA. highly skilled individuals in my company leave, right? Because, yeah, they need to fend for themselves, and I have to support that. But what I have done is to create an enabling environment for continuity, such that for roles and functions that can be performed remotely, I give them the opportunity to do that. And because they are strongly connected to the vision of our company, that bond alone, right, has retained them to still contribute value into the company, even though they are not in the country, right? So I think at the corporate level for different businesses, especially banks that have now suffered this greatly, I think it's just important to deliberately, at the HR level, create inroads, right, and linkage back to these people. Don't, when someone comes to, and this is to HR practitioners, when your staff members come to you and tell you that they are leaving, please don't turn them to enemies. They are valuable people. Respect their decision, support that, and give them that inroad back into your business. Trust me, if you support them, they would form that, they would hold on to ensure that that knowledge gap is mitigated as much as possible.
Thank you. Razak, you've been active in what is effectively technology, and at the Conference of Technology and Finance, one of the pioneers. The ICT sector has been one of the beacons of hope in recent times, growing at 3 times the rate of growth of the economy. And today accounts for 9.6% of GDP, which is actually more than oil at 9.5. Given the positives you've seen from that sector, are there lessons that we can draw from your own experience playing in that space that perhaps we can extend to other sectors of the economy in order to help with this, rejuvenation that we would like to see in the economy?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Victor. My pleasure to be here as well. Yeah, I think there's a lot to be learned in terms of the growth we've seen in the tech sector currently. More importantly is the fact that the driver of growth in that sector has been a combination of 2 things. Policies that are driven internally within the shore of Nigeria, and more importantly, some external factors, largely capital. Capital has been moving globally in the past 6-7 years. And to a very large extent, Nigeria and Africa as a whole have been beneficiaries to that. So what can be learned and be applied to other sectors in this space is, 1, from a demographic standpoint, I think we're in a vantage position as a country. And that is primarily because the demographic structure means we are very young as a country, and young people naturally have tendencies to be attracted to this sector, largely because it fits into the lifestyle they grew up to. An average person, an average young person right now is living a digital life, right? And the tech industry fits into that digital life. And what that means is that the tech industry will continuously attract the attention, the interest of that demographic segment. And because that segment is also huge relative to the entire population, then it presents an opportunity. Then how do you ensure that this kind of attraction that we've seen in the tech industry can be replicated, say in agri, can be replicated in transportation, can be replicated in other sectors, right? Because the energy of the young people is immense. You can't quantify it. And that is what speaks to the deliberate policies of the Western world that result in what we are seeing today in terms of the immigration we're experiencing. It's not by accident. The only sad reality is that the Western world have developed policies to attract the best talent from across the world, but in this part of the world, we haven't responded appropriately in order to stem that tide. And at the company level, we might do what we can do, right? Pay the best salary possible, create cozy work environment as much as possible. There are overarching macro factors that companies can't control. My company can't control the inflation rate in the country, but my staff will face the pinching effect of inflation. I can't control the infrastructure deficit we have in the country, but staff will face that as well. So when those factors are the considerations that most people point to make decisions to emigrate, then companies generally become very apt in terms of what they can possibly do. But of course, we've seen instances where companies have responded positively, but that will just be, that won't attack the problem at the core. The problem at the core is for the country as a whole to have hope, for young people to be hopeful, for young people to have that dream that this country belongs to us, because that is the macro picture that can stem this tide. So overall, in terms of what we've seen in the tech industry, capital moving into the tech industry to encourage and build a local ecosystem, can that be replicated in agri sector, for example, instead of going through the whole route of old people doing agri the subsistence way? It is possible, but there has to be deliberate action. And what we've also seen is that when policies happen that way, there is this natural gravitation of external actions to support that policy, right? For example, in the tech industry, there is this reinforcing effect of external capital. And that external capital gets built on, you have local capital feed into that, and the entire ecosystem keeps growing. So if there is a policy signal in agri, for example, that is relatively favorable, there will be external capital. Capital, as we all know, will move to the right space. So if that is well in place, this can easily be replicated in other sectors. But overall, the talent issue is something that affects every industry, every sector. Some are more affected than the others, but I think at a national level, there should be a policy response to stem that tide. Otherwise, the trend will continue. As you rightly mentioned, immigration is not a new thing. It happens everywhere in the world. In fact, it's happening in some countries in a stronger way than it is happening in Nigeria. What is concerning about our current immigration scenario is a trend. Where can it possibly get to? Can it increase to 3%, 4%, 5% if things continue to get worse? And you really don't want to wait until that scenario crystallizes before you take action. So the current scenario is not as bad as we might see it to be. What is dangerous is the trend, because the trend is extremely strong. And in 5 years, 10 years' time, what would that be? And that calls for immediate policy response from the government.
Thank you for that submission. And we'll now begin to wind down this, and I'll start again in the reverse order. You touched on policy. You touched on infrastructure and certain actions that are required to perhaps change the fortunes of the country. We have an election coming. Given the issues you've mentioned, education, as Madam rightly put it, Dr. Kumbi, and what that does for the workforce productivity, what are some of the policy recommendations you would love to see being championed by candidates as well as government coming into power next year in order to begin to reposition Nigeria for positive, productive, and momentous growth?
Okay, well, I think there's a lot, but I'll just pick on few things. We can speak about, monetary policy, fiscal policy, all of those things. But I think what is critical at this point is ability to galvanize the entire country towards a common purpose. Like people having that renewed hope that something is happening in this country and we are departing from what we've been experiencing in the past 4 or 5 years. If any candidate is able to do that rightly, it has a natural effect to reignite the hope that we've lost over the past 6, 7, 8, 10 years. And I think that is at the core of it. Because right now, if you look at the scenario that we have in the country, even from regulator standpoint and policymaker standpoint, it appears that every time policymaker states they want to do X, the market reacts opposite, meaning that the market doesn't trust the policy pronouncements. So that trust deficit is an important element that needs to be fixed before we even go to the granular details of what specific actions needs to happen. And among all the candidates, frankly, I'm not sure if we've seen a force that can galvanize the entire country. But we still have a couple of months, you know, to the election. But if that force exists that can galvanize the entire country towards a common purpose, I think that would be a fantastic starting point beyond the granular details of specific actions that needs to happen.
Thank you very much for that. Orelua, the question is, as someone who works in, as someone who is an entrepreneur and who has to recruit talent, you've highlighted the impact that education has on ensuring the sustainability of the pipeline of talent. Are there things we should begin to do as a country with our education, especially given the pressures we're feeling, both in terms of corporate Nigeria as well as the medical field, where we're also losing quite a lot of our talent? What can we do differently about our education to perhaps accelerate the throughput of that pipeline to very quickly help stem that bleed?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll just run through this very quickly. So just to put it out there, like in the past, since 1999 actually, we've experienced 16 ASU strikes. 16. That's a lot, right? So we need to, even at the experiential level of education, we need to remove that blockade, right? To ensure that there is, because when you are able to properly transfer knowledge, when there is a sustained continuity. So when you experience breakage over and over, it becomes disjointed. So that is important for us to fix. And then also there is a need for the government to fund education properly. It's a topic that's been discussed on many different platforms. I think it's just important for action to follow that discussion, right? Where there is a clear and a deliberate push by the government to make education what it should be. Of course, we know that Nigeria is faced by many different challenges, but it's very important that at this point, we put education at the forefront. We actually recognize that there is a state of emergency in our education sector, and we start to galvanize action, right, toward fixing the problem in there. So funding right now is the big concern. Now, to wrap this up, between the demand and the supply, demand being the workforce, demand being the need in the industry, supply being the workforce, there is a huge mismatch in terms of skill set needed in the workforce and what is produced in the school. For some weird reason, we have glorified the bachelor's degree, for instance. But is that what we need in Nigeria? Is that what we need in Nigeria right now? So we have a lot of graduates. Good for us, right? Lots and lots of graduates. But the workforce, the skill set needed right now, do we need more graduates or we need more technical people? So there's a need for us to be very deliberate even about the way we showcase and we attract people, students, into this school. We deliberately downgrade our technical schools. We make our polytechnic look sound as second class, right? We promote BSc. It's fine. Degree is good. BSc degree is good. But then, what is the relationship between the demand and the supply? And government needs to be very deliberate about how we push people, students, into those learning institutions.
Thank you. Dr. Kumbi, finally to you. Orelua touched on something that I think is germane. That dichotomy between the, should I call it white-collared, employee and the dearth of technical skills. Today, many of us struggle to find appropriately skilled artisans in several areas: carpentry, woodwork, plumbing, name it. Recently, the laws around pensions were changed, the regulations, to allow a part of our pensions going towards home ownership and mortgages. If that capital, which is 20% of what is stored on, about 14 trillion, were to be unlocked initially, we're looking at potentially up to 3 trillion naira will be available. The question is, if that money comes into the real estate construction industry today, do we have appropriate level of supply of carpenters, plumbers, electricians who can serve that industry at the skill level required to build solid houses? If not, what do we need to do to feed that sector?
The answer to that is no. We certainly don't have the required skills. And this will take me back to how our education policy started off with the 6-3-3-4 system. 6 years of primary school, 3 years of junior secondary. And at that point, I know that in junior secondary school, they are meant to write the NAPTEP exams and all of that to see if they're going to go towards technical or moving on to 3 years of senior secondary school and eventually to university. We have continued to promote that our children go through the 6 and 3 and 3 and eventually to 4 years. And that is what has put us in this. You mentioned the average artisan from any of our fellow West African countries, whether it's a plumber or someone who is any of the artisans, you see the difference. And it's because they were very deliberate, extremely deliberate about how they make sure that this works. And why doesn't this work? It takes me back to the basic education. What is happening in our base? That's the foundation. If you don't get it right at the foundation level, you're just building on falsehood. It's simply building on falsehood. So if they don't have the right skill sets, literacy, numeracy, those two key things at the basic level to get into junior secondary and decide whether they're going to go into technical vocation or they're going to go ahead to get into universities and polytechnics and all of that. The thing is, our polytechnics, so we say they do their IT. What happens during that year of IT? Theory learned, do they truly have practical experience? Look at my darling Igbo brothers. What they do is apprenticeship, and that is what I would advocate for. In the UK, you don't have internship. You have apprenticeship. You find them go and learn to be a gas broiler. He goes to understudy someone. He learns. He does the practical. He writes the exams. He gets certification. But that's not what we're doing. We're not doing, and that's why the apprenticeship scheme has continued to work very well. It's something that has been studied over and over and over again in Nigeria. I don't think that when we do get them into vocational training, that they should go on and do the 1 year of IT where they can be T-boys or admin assistants. They don't get that practical training. It's not a 6 months thing. It can be a 2-year apprenticeship. It can be a 5-year. But at the end of it all, whoever they have studied under. And I think that the government should look at this even much more. You have a lot of people in technical, the mechanics, the tailors and all of that, and to have a structured scheme for those of the people who have gone to the polytechnics and monotechnics to come out and do a proper apprenticeship. I think that will change it. The second thing is I think autonomy should be given, and this comes back to ASU strike. So why is it that the government, what has happened in the last 7 months? It's just been 7 months of waste of time. What has happened? Have the lecturers gotten what they want? No. And so the children have been home for 7 months. They're back. I can assure you, because those demands were not met, in another few months, there might be another strike. But if there's an autonomy given to our higher institutions, they are able to access grants. They are able to run their institution without waiting for subvention from governments. It changes it. And a lot of us who have had the opportunity of seeing how education is run in other countries, why is it that they don't have strike? One day of strike is trouble, because if I've gotten grant from various organizations, I need to deliver. And so I think we should start looking back at that. Maybe, just maybe, that will help us. But basic education, getting the right teachers, the curriculum we're teaching is archaic. I need to drop this here. My mother did her PGC in postgraduate certificate in education in one of the universities in 1980. 30 years down the line, I was also doing my postgraduate certificate in education at that time. And I was at home reading notes, and she asked me if I'd gone to the trunk box to bring out the notes. Same thing, same notes for 30 years. How can a student who is reading a 30-year-old note compare favorably with any child who has graduated, whether it's technical, whether it's junior secondary school or foundation? How can they compete favorably? So our curriculum is something else that we need to look at. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On that sobering note, we come again to what is the reality of the Nigerian experience. With all of the challenges on the macro front, elections due, but still issues with the economy, with our finance, with governance, with national cohesion, I think our work is cut out for us. What I can say, when we look back and look at what we've done, the work we've done in chronicling the report this year, it is clear to us that part of the issues is about educating the Nigerian mind to begin to know what questions to ask and how to make decisions about who leads us. Because if the blue-collar worker, the poor society begin to recognize where value lies in terms of education, creating opportunities for their young, which you touched on in terms of demographics, then it says that perhaps we can begin to get things right. Our banks cannot operate in isolation. They operate in an economy. They operate in a macro environment where if things were better, a lot of the complaints we have about access to finance, access to credit will be much better served, because the banks can then find credible counterparties to whom they can extend credit to and who can also behave right in terms of debt management. At this point, we'll have to bring this to a close. It's been a long evening. Thank you very much for your time and for contributing. I hand the mic back to the MC.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I would have loved to ask questions, but time wouldn't permit. Although, let me just leave my question so that as you go back to your seats, you ponder, since you guys are profiling solutions to questions. And my question would be, how do we stop ASU strike, oil theft, and politicians rigging the next election? With these three simple questions, you can go back to your seats, ponder about it, and see if you can find a way out. Thank you very much.
Let's stand for pictures, please.
They will take pictures and they will leave. Something came out of this panel, and I like what you said about the whole skills acquisition thing, how the 633 forces that was set up to make sure people develop skills before they are done with their education is not really living up to expectation. Same thing with the OND program and all the other programs that government has set up
research
that has not yielded fruit. In fact, based on that, my humble suggestion will be that instead of scrapping NYSC, that the government should turn it to National Youth Apprenticeship Service. Let them use that 1 year to learn skills, because this National Youth Service is no longer working anything. No. Once they graduate from university, if you check the trends today, most people graduate and they go back to fashion design. Some of them graduate and they go back to acquire other skills or get other training, because it's no jobs. no skills after how many years in the university? So government might as well be intentional. Once you leave, that whole 1 year of NYSC, they do attachments to places where people can go learn carpentry, mechanic. You never can tell, because a graduate will learn faster than somebody who's not a graduate. And before you know it, someone who's graduated from a program within your 1 year of youth service may realize that with the skills that you gathered in that 1 year, you can set up a business. You know, and you can approach a bank, get some funding. 1 year's skill work training as a graduate prepares you to go ahead and do something for yourself. Instead of posting you to Kauran and Mother to go and be loafing around. Half the time they are not even there. You understand? Some of them will just sign their register and go and do hookup somewhere. You know? And at the end of the day, before you service, they just have 2 children to show the nation, or 1.5. I don't even know, but anyways. So yeah, that would be my suggestion. Government has to look at that NYSC again. Let us make better use of it. Having said that, gentlemen, I really appreciate your patience. You guys have been fantastic. And I'm sure that we are now paying attention with renewed energy, seeing that food has been served. Please, if you've not had something to eat, check the menu on your table. Call the attention of any of our stewards. They'll make sure that you get something to eat. We want you refilled, recharged, and ready for the concluding part of the program. We're getting to that point. Nothing in life is easy. That is why one great quote that I like so much from an unknown author, it says, "It's good for all men to marry. No man deserves to go unpunished." Meaning that experience is valuable for everybody. Yes. And you would think that marriage is easy. It may be easy for women. It's not really easy for men. If you want to know what married men go through, any married man here knows that once your wife offers you chair in your house, that case is not in your favor. Once you hear, "Honey, sit down, we have to talk," that is the point where men begin to think, "Now waiting, I don't commit again. Did I leave anything on my phone when I came back from that thought? Did I forget anything in the briefcase?" They've not said anything, but your mind on the do probe of you. So it's not really easy. Or maybe as a man, when you go finish, come back, your wife don't set food for dining. Then as you settle down to eat, you say, "When you eat finish, may you can't tell me who be Sandra." Suddenly the food will lose taste for your mouth. You go understand, say life not really easy like that. But it's okay. You've had something to eat. I think if I have the permission of the CEO, I will say let's go to unveiling of, because we have one more package to unveil, which is key. But I know that we are supposed to have a goodwill message before that unveiling. Technicals, if the goodwill message is on video, we might as well. If the goodwill message is on video, please we'll take the goodwill message. Otherwise, if I have your permission, we'll go to the Optimus unveiling. Okay. Gentlemen, you will bear with me. Let me take a little brief. I'll be back on stage. Yeah, what I'm trying to do is for us to make the best use of the time that we'll have left.
Yes, the rabbi sold out to the merchant ship. Minutes after they took I from the bottomless pit, but my hands were made strong by the hands of the Almighty. We fought in this generation triumphantly. Sing this song of freedom, all I ever had. redemption song. Say, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None of ourselves can free our mind. Have no fear for atomic energy, cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophet? Why we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a parody. We've got to fulfill the book. Won't you help us sing this song of freedom? All I ever am. Redemption song. Say redemption song. I've got sunshine on a cloudy day, and when it's cold outside, I've got the month to make. I hear you say, what can make me feel this way? My girl, my girl, my girl, talking about my girl. My girl, I got so much honey that it bees for me. I've got a sweeter song that the birds in the tree. Yeah. I hear you say, what can make me feel this way? My girl, my girl, my girl, talking about my girl.
Thank you.
My girl.
Thank you, guys. You guys have been far too kind. Thank you so very much for filling up that space for me. All right, please, I still need your attention here. The program is still very much on. We're going to take a couple. Please, those on the aisle, you're crowding the camera. Yeah, you're blocking the camera men, our camera crew. All right, before we do the unveiling, let's take some few goodwill messages from those in-house. As you all know, today we're not just unveiling the banking sector report, we're also celebrating 27 years anniversary of this great company. Amongst other things that we're celebrating today, let me invite for a goodwill message, Dr. Emeka Uzeto. Please, a round of applause for Dr. Emeka. Can we please put our hands together? You guys do it like you have life. You've had some food now. You can clap. Thank you very much. God bless you. Ladies and gentlemen, please, let's have Dr. Emeka. Which one they come out smoke again? But that woman know they smoke normally now. What's going on?
Good evening, everybody. Afrinvest has been in existence for 8 years now. And within the very short time of their existence, they've done marvelously very, very well. It's a very big and reckoned company to reckon with. If all the blue companies of the country will do something and follow the way of Afrinvest, I don't think most companies of the country will be doing very marvelously well. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. We appreciate you all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Emeka. Thank you. Please, before I go to the next, if you know you dropped your bank card, please, I have it here. If your bank card is no longer on you, please approach the MC. But from the nature of this card, it not be like the owner really get money like that, but still, I had to announce it, you know. Okay, next, for another goodwill message, ladies and gentlemen, let me invite a young man who has done very well in real estate, the CEO of Homes and Homes, my very good friend, Mr. Ike Mumezoke. Please, round of applause for Mr. Ike Mumezoke as he comes forward. Please, put your hands together for the gentleman. Put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. You know, it's just a show of presence, like we are still here, you know. At least so he knows he's not alone. Oh, you want to operate from there? Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's nice to be here. I can say one of my best elevations in life is an encounter with Afrinvest. I can boldly say that. And I really appreciate them for all they've done. And being here to experience what they are doing and the impact we should brace for the next thing that's going to happen in Nigeria is a good experience. So relationship with Afrinvest, I can say, is a top-notch. And I encourage everyone to, if you haven't had any association with Afrinvest, please try. Do try. You won't regret it. I wish them the best. Always, they don't disappoint. And I appreciate you. Ike, well done.
Yes, you've heard it from someone who has experienced it. If you've not had a relationship with them, try it. You will love it. It will be life-changing. That's a message from a man who knows. All right. Having said that, the final one will come from a lady. Ladies and gentlemen, in the same spirit, even make it warmer, round of applause for Mrs. Funke Ladimeji. Please, a round of applause for her. Encourage her, she comes forward. You want to appeal from there as well? No problem.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today to celebrate with a brother, a very good friend from way back when, Ike Chioke. And so I want to congratulate Ike and the whole Afrinvest team today on this 27th anniversary. Obviously, the organization has come a long way. And I think from what the prior speaker said, there's a lot to be said for Afrinvest today. And it's a reflection of how far the organization has come and of the team, including the board, has done. And so I congratulate them. I know there are many, many celebrations today. There's the launching of a new brand, which aligns with the digital ambitions of Afrinvest. And I also believe the banking report, as you all know, which is a flag bearer for Afrinvest. And so I want to say well done to everybody at Afrinvest. Well done for what you have done so far. And I wish you all the best in this journey to being a digital player in the financial services space. Well done. Thank you very much.